Welcome in to the newest episode of the Hoth Hangout podcast. Glad to have you with us, joining us for episode 83 of the pod. And we are talking all things Acolyte season premiere. If you haven't caught our reactions over on the Hoth Hangout YouTube channel, we released episodes 1 and 2 there just earlier this week. We had a great time watching it together, and that's what we're going to be talking about today and breaking it down. So much to discuss in that regard. But before we get into any Acolyte discussion, I want to give you a quick reminder that if you're not yet subscribed to the Hoth Hangout YouTube channel, definitely check us out over there for the video version of every podcast, as well as our latest reactions to the newest Star Wars shows, just like The Acolyte, which went out earlier this week. You can head on over there and subscribe. Thank you to the 426 of you who are subscribed over on the Hoth Hangout YouTube channel. Additionally, you can contact us via email at hothhangout@gmail.com with your Star Wars thoughts or questions, and we'd love to showcase them here on the pod. You can find the Hoth Hangout podcast anywhere you get your pods, including Apple and Spotify. And if you're listening on either of those platforms or any platform that allows you to leave a 5-star review, leave a 5-star review. We would appreciate it very much, and it also allows other folks who love Star Wars to find the podcast more easily as well. You can also find us on the social platforms, whether it be TikTok, Instagram, or X. We are findable at Hoth Hangout on each of those. Additionally, in the show notes of today's episode, you can find the link to our Hoth Hangout community Discord server. Definitely check it out and head on over there for lots of awesome stuff related to Star Wars as well. Again, that's in the link or in the show notes of today's episode. And moving into our Acolyte discussion today, the question that's on all of our minds for today's episode, well, perhaps many questions, but the one we would like to highlight is, who is your favorite character so far in the show? That's going to be part of our topic of discussion today. But before we get into any of it, Joey, what's going on? How are you doing, man?
Good. Just like always, we are like right on time, and it's gonna be a good episode to
Yep, yep,
start
yep.
up this season of the Acolyte. I'm very excited to talk just for the next few weeks, 6 weeks or so. We're gonna talk all about the next 6 weeks. Yes, we're gonna talk all about the Acolyte, and this is gonna be a really good starter for us. Man, I really love this show. I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, me too. I think we were both pretty impressed with kind of just how the show went, and I mean, I think it probably exceeded my expectations. But we'll get into more of that here in a bit, of course, once we start our Acolyte discussion. Lots to talk about today, but before we get into the Acolyte discussion, we want to focus on two news pieces today. The first of which is regarding a recent statement from Lucasfilm head Kathleen Kennedy, who stated, kind of in this, I believe it was an interview, this struggle with toxicity due to a male-dominated fan base. Joey, I wanted to kind of just throw it to you and see what your thoughts were in regard to these comments recently by Kathleen Kennedy.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's no hiding this. There is always been this feeling that Star Wars is kind of a male dominated space over the years, and it feels like women are not fully embraced into it. We've seen it time and time again with particular actors in the series, especially in recent times. We think about Daisy Ridley, we think about Kelly Marie Tran, we think about a lot of people that are been introduced into the Star Wars world, and maybe not in a great way, unfortunately. And that goes with fans as well. There's always going to be gatekeeping. There's always going to be all this. So I think the fact that she says this is kind of like, yeah, well, yeah, this is something that women have been kind of been faced with, whether it is in Star Wars or in gaming that you and I are very involved in, or in things like STEM, and so these are topics that are very, very maybe that's something that we don't necessarily always have to get to, because you and I are both males and we don't maybe experience it as much. But we love, I love the conversation, whether with women as well, during with Star Wars. And a big story, and I've said this before, was with the Kelly Marie Tran one, um when not Rise of Skywalker, Last Jedi came out, received a lot of hate for her role. And she was just playing a role so much, in fact, that she was actually decided to remove herself from social media and all this, just because the toxicity that she was receiving from the fandom and from Star Wars, and come to find out that when I went to Celebration in 2019, she got a standing ovation from from the fans at the Star Wars Celebration. So to see that, that there is sometimes those people that are more toxic will be just louder, and then you just hear them more, and it kind of it's just it hurts a lot more. But the fact of the matter is, there are a lot of people that are, very supportive of women as well. So we just want to make sure that, especially from our podcast here, that we do support, love and support the women of Star Wars, actors, fans everywhere, directors. We're getting a lot of directors coming in, especially in here, and perfect segue into the Acolyte, being directed, written, everything by women. So to have this kind of come out now, I think it's probably good because we're going into the Acolyte here. Very female dominated. You have May, you have Jackie, you have Vanestra, and again the director as well. So as you can tell, this is a big topic for me, and I always want to make sure that everyone is fully represented in the Star Wars fandom that I love so much.
Nice. I think that's pretty well said. And I mean, I think you know, I mean, for me, I point to like Ahsoka as being like
Hmm.
kind of a great example of a female character in Star Wars that I look at, and I'm like, wow, that's like a female character that's really well done, and so yeah, I mean, for me, that's my favorite example personally in regards to this topic, and there's always going to be bad actors out there. I think, you know, when we talk about like kind of the toxicity element, who kind of resort to mistreating actors in this case, like you mentioned Kelly Marie Tran's case, and you also mentioned kind of the other side of that like the this contingent of fans, kind of who are probably more well representative of true Star Wars fans at Star Wars Celebration, giving her the standing ovation because they sort of knew all that she had to
Right.
go through, all the hate that she received online, probably from like a vocal minority of people. So, yeah, I think that's pretty well said, and I think there's plenty of characters within Star Wars that like Ahsoka, for example, that we can hold up and say that they're awesome examples of women in Star Wars for sure. So, yeah, let us know down in the comments what your thoughts are on this recent article as well. But as we move into today's second news topic, it's in regards more so to Andor, rather than the Acolyte, as we'll be talking about in a bit. Andor season two, it was recently announced that there is going to be a time jump not only between seasons one and two, but also a significant time jump between portions of the episode in the show. Not only will there be a 1 year time jump between seasons one and season two, but there will also be a 1 year time jump between episodes three and four, between episodes six and seven, as well as between episodes nine and 10. And they're almost releasing season two in four segments of 3 episodes apiece, where each of those segments that are 3 episodes long will be taking place over the course of the year, of a year, I should say, and that will lead us right up to the events, almost up to the events of Rogue One, as we could probably assume. So, I think this is an interesting, emergence in terms of the news surrounding Andor. I mean, we were talking, you and I and Gibbo, right before that we started recording, that like I don't even think we realized that Andor was that many years prior to to Rogue One. I think for some reason I was under the assumption at least that it was like maybe 2 or 3 years prior and not more like 5 or 6, like we now know for sure it is. So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts in regards to the announcement of the time jump? What that might mean for the plot of the show?
I think it's an interesting concept to film it in this way or release it in this way. I hope it works. A part of me is a little bit worried because it's going to be so fragmented between each, what was it, three episode kind of arcs. I'm not sure if you call them arcs. Reminds me a lot of the Clone Wars, right? Because that's kind of how they did that. They did like 3 episode arcs, kind of throughout the Clone Wars animated series. So I wonder if it's gonna be anything like that. But yeah, so but it's kind of weird because it's within one season of like 12 episodes to have these storylines, So I'm cautiously optimistic. They did season one really well, and we know we love Rogue One, so the lead into that I hope is really good. So uh, I'm a little bit just concerned because I've never seen something like this before, but I hope it just turns out to be a winner for us.
Yeah, I think Andor was kind of a huge surprise, when we watched the first episodes together. Gosh, I guess that was almost like 2 years ago now. It's kind of hard to
Hmm.
believe. That was how the podcast started, was watching Andor season 1 together.
Yeah, without
So
Gibbo,
yeah,
and
I'm excited to.
for
Yeah.
hour and a half episodes. Yeah, back then.
Yeah, yeah. Those good old 90-minute just talking without a script episodes. Those were an interesting time, but anyways, yeah, lots to be excited about with the release of Andor upcoming. Be on the lookout for more information and news in that regard. We do have one viewer comment we wanted to showcase today. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe this is from a recent Acolyte reaction that we did earlier this week. And I think the comment is from Spy on Sports that we received just earlier this week. Spy on Sports said, as I increase the size of my screen to read the comment. Guessing that the ease with which Indara died was an indicator as to how the Jedi have grown soft or complacent after years of peace. May's master claiming that an acolyte should not use a weapon to kill a Jedi leads me to believe that he thinks it can be done. I mean, this is a really good take, I think, from Spy on Sports. And first of all, thank you to Spy on Sports for submitting this comment as well. Um, I think there is some truth to that, that the ease at which Indara was able to be killed by May is maybe indicative of the fact that the Jedi have grown complacent, kind of uh, in their place in the galaxy. I don't know. Maybe they have, maybe they haven't. But I think I'm also more interested in this second piece that Spy on Sports mentions. I really don't understand the idea of like the acolyte's master asking her to kill a Jedi without a weapon. Like, I want to know more about the reasoning for that in this show. Did you have any thoughts on this comment, or in that same regard or line of thinking, kind of why that might be the case in terms of how to go about these killings that we've seen May go forth and do in the first two episodes of the show?
I think what I really like about this comment is that we have to remember at this point in time what are things like. You and I and all the other Star Wars fans have years, decades, centuries of content from A New Hope and then forward, and we have all these books and everything, so we know how Jedi, we know how Sith kind of work, but that's not where we are in the High Republic during this era. There haven't been Sith around for millennia. There haven't, been anybody going after Jedi. There hasn't, been assassins like me. So this is like a, first in a very, very long time that maybe they just, they really aren't ready for this type of thing. So I think it's a very poignant, a very, very good comment by Spy on Sports to kind of settle us and put us in our place here.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and it begs the question, like, as we move on through the rest of the show, will that complacency somehow change by the end of the show? Not really sure how they're going to deal with that, but I'm excited to see. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about that here in a bit. But in regards to the poll that we asked last week, and once again, thank you to Spy on Sports for submitting that comment. The poll we asked last week was simply, "Are you excited for the Acolyte?" This was, of course, prior to the release of the show, which we watched just a few days ago. We asked both those on YouTube as well as over on Twitter this question, with 79% of the people on the YouTube community tab saying, yes, you are excited for the release of the Acolyte, with 21% saying, no, you are not. While over on Twitter breaking the stereotype once again, being the optimist in this case, with 89% saying that you are excited for the Acolyte, with 11% saying, no, you are not. I mean, I feel like that's pretty indicative of kind of just the general Star Wars fan base right there. Those numbers, at least I know this is the case for you and I. But anytime there's new Star Wars content, it's an exciting experience and
Hmm.
moment for us because we get to see something new, and I'm always down for more new Star Wars. So, thank you to those of you who voted in this week's poll. Be on the lookout for next week's poll over on the Hoth Hangout Twitter, as well as on the Hoth Hangout community tab. And we will tell more about the question of the week, excuse me. Tell more about the question of the week at the end of today's episode, moving into episode 3 of The Acolyte next week. Having said all of that, the time has arrived to discuss Acolyte episodes 1 and 2. Before we get into some of the details, and I think we mentioned this a little bit in our reactions, just kind of our thoughts after each of the episodes, but what's just your quick general feeling or general vibe after seeing episodes 1 and 2? Did you like one more than the other, or just what was your favorite thing that you took away from the experience of seeing both episodes, Joey?
I think they made a choice with lumping these two together. I know a lot of shows do that. The premiere has a couple of episodes, but I think the story, as far as the storyline between the two here, I think it really works well as kind of a joint effort. So I do like that. And I mean, let's be honest, what was it, an hour of Star Wars straight? I mean, I'm fine with that, so, or a little bit over an hour. So I think it was a wise choice in that way. I think I really like the title, how they're doing the titling. They kind of do like a lost and
Yeah.
found in first episode, and what was the other one? It was justice and the revenge in the other one. So I don't know. I'm just liking just this general vibe of like the flow of how they're doing things here, and I'm interested in seeing. And I'll be honest, I haven't read reviews, or I know here or there's going to be people that are kind of more critical than maybe I have been, but I really enjoyed these episodes. And for the first time, like when I went to do the rewatch to do the notes, I was like actually like excited to rewatch it. So I think that's
Yeah.
indicative of how much I am enjoying this.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Um, just a general curiosity question. How many times do you typically like to watch the premiere of a new show to kind of get into the feel of it?
I mean, depends on like how the rest of the series goes. So if I'll watch the premiere and then I'll watch it one more time probably before the next episode, and then really depending if it goes, if I really am enjoying the series, I'm like, okay, now I have to kind of rewatch everything, before the
Yeah.
finale or that type of thing. So what about you? What do you normally do?
Yeah, I'm kind of the same mind. I would say it's rare if I watch it less than 3 times.
Hmm.
Like, of course, you and I watch it together for the first time, and then I kind of what I call, like, subconsciously watch it if I'm doing an edit, then that usually is, like,
Yeah,
not
that's true.
really watching it, but you kinda get the gist of what's going on in the episode. And then I like to sit down one more time and just casually enjoy it, to kind of, like, digest it and see if I missed anything and any stuff like that, so probably about 3 times or so. Yeah, Givo Givo said he watches it once, then watches 3 to 5 reactions of it, yeah. I actually do the same thing. I love watching other people's reactions to it after we do our reaction to kinda see, like, I don't know, just, like, a wide range of opinions of
Hmm.
how people felt about it, but, it felt like from everything I've seen, I've only watched one other reaction to it at this point, but it seems like even the people that maybe were negative on it, like, 2 or 3 weeks ago before they'd seen it, seem to be having at least a neutral, if not
Yeah.
positive, opinion
Hey,
of it now.
that's net gain. That's
So
net gain right there.
right, exactly, yeah, so anyways, a pretty, solid premiere of a new show, I would say, but, yeah, like you said, the first episode was titled Lost and Found, and the second episode, Revenge, and Justice, I believe, and it looks like every episode based on that is gonna be kind of this almost like dichotomy nomenclature for the episodes, if you will, with varying ideals and ideas as part of the episode title. But we opened with episode 1, Lost and Found, and the series started with a crawl that, of course, doesn't crawl. The thing that we pointed out with this opening crawl that doesn't crawl is that in the middle segment, if you're watching the video version of the podcast, or if you recall from the episode, it says a powerful few learn to use the Force in secret. Now, is the few referring to May and her master, who we have yet to be revealed who that is? Is the secret person her master? Is the secret person a Sith? We're not really sure how this is going to work. Are there more? Is a few more than 2 people? These are all questions that I've been going over in my own brain over the past few days, but I'm excited to learn more about kind of who this person might be, and we might talk about that and touch on that more towards the end of the podcast, but kind of wanted to just throw that out there as a foretaste for what we'll be talking about in a bit. But we open up with May on Uda, I believe is the name of the planet, if I'm not mistaken. Joey, am I pronouncing Uda correctly to the best of your memory?
Sure. I don't remember either. I think Ueda, maybe it's Ueda.
Ueda, something like that.
One of those.
But it's a yeah, but it's a new planet nonetheless, and it looks pretty stunning. As you can see if you're watching the video version of the podcast from the footage in the background. And May just it opens up right away, and May confronts Master Indara to challenge her. And we're like, oh my gosh, we're already getting Carrie Ann Moss in Star Wars. I thought this was going to be at the end of episode 1, but it's already happening. We love this. May hits her with the "We have unfinished business," and wants her to attack her with all of her strength, which I think she maybe says the same thing to the next master who she tries to go after in the next episode. So perhaps this is something that the Sith, if he is a Sith or whoever this person is who's training her, has told her to say when attacking them. But it's very clear she has an agenda of these 4 Jedi, which we learn later on in episode 2. And so she goes to Andara, says, "Attack me with all your strength." And the fight, of course, is one we've kind of seen a lot of parts of in a lot of the trailers of the show. But it was nice to kind of see it all put together in one piece, and it inevitably leads to Master Indara's death because May throws the throwing knife at the bartender. Indara, using the force, saves the bartender, but simultaneously, I guess, just doesn't see May throw the other throwing knife. How did you interpret this scene? That she just kind of didn't see
Yeah.
it, or she knew she was sacrificing herself?
Oh, I think. Oh, actually a good that's a good question. I mean, Master Andara seemed like a very powerful Jedi. I don't know, I know we didn't get a lot of screen time with her, but seemed pretty good as far as the combat. Um, but she did also question like who trained you. I think that was one of the questions that Master Andara. So I
Mhm.
mean, which is kind of interesting, right? Because at this point, let's go into the High Republic mindset here. The Jedi think that they're just the Jedi, and you have somebody is obviously a Force user. I believe she even says that she calls backup or whoever and says there's a Force user here that are unidentified Force user. I think that's what she says.
Right.
So that confuses her as well, and and maybe she underestimates her because of that, because maybe she's never actually battled another Force user. These are just things that you have to think of. So if you've never battled one, or whoever trained you has never battled one, how are you actually ever going to be ready for one, right? um
Mhm.
it was very interesting. This is just a very interesting and sad death, of course. And I think that she was just not expecting it. She doesn't know, how to play dirty, because that's a dirty move. You know what I mean? Basically trying to go after someone innocent and then going after that person instead. So I really do think that, I don't think it was a sacrifice by any means. I think she definitely just did not expect that move from May.
Yeah, I kind of got that vibe as well that it was more of a surprise thing that she just didn't see it coming, a dirty move, so to speak. And I like your unidentified force user acronym, a UFU, if you will. We need to
UFU,
start calling
that's
them.
right.
Yeah. Well, after Indara's death, May spares the life of the bartender and child, which I think we noted during our reaction was a particularly interesting thing. To see her go after this Jedi, kill this Jedi, and then see this innocent bartender who she had kind of, I mean, definitely
Yeah.
used in a way to kill Indara. I mean, she was fully intent on killing him if she needed to, but then makes the choice to spare the bartender's life. So to me, that shows a little bit of foreshadowing that there's, to use a Return of the Jedi line, there's still good left in you, in terms of May's character and whatnot. But and then of course the child behind the bartender was very cute, and maybe
Hmm.
that was the determining factor. But nonetheless, the point remains there seems to be some outs of good left in May, and I think maybe that scene foreshadows an eventual turning back to the light. Perhaps I don't know. We'll see, of course, by the end of the show. But we learn in the next scene we kind of go to a completely different scene after the interlude of the Acolyte title shows up, that Osha who we later learn is the twin of May, which we had speculated heavily leading into the premiere of the show, is working as a mechanic on a ship. To the best of my knowledge, Joey, I was not familiar with this term. Has it ever been used in Star Wars before, to your
I
knowledge? A
mean,
mechanic?
I have not heard it ever. This was my first iteration of hearing this word at all in Star Wars. So the first mech neck, everyone.
This is where we need to ask all those Star Wars buffs and junkies if this is truly the first time it's been used or not. We'll leave it up to you all in the comments, but um, she's on a ship, and it needs a shield generator repair. And during this repair, she has a flashback of her attacked village, which we learn is kind of going to be this main, I guess, storyline or origin story of Osha and probably May too, if you will. Kind of throughout the entirety of these two episodes, there's various flashbacks or scenes where you're not really sure if it's a flashback or a memory or if it's like the Force, this like dyad thing with her sister, perhaps. Not exactly sure what's going on, but we do learn that as a child, her village was attacked. We later learn kind of more information on that. But the ship, we also learn that the ship is being manned by the Nemoidians, who definitely do not have the George Lucas kind of vibe to them, if you will, so to
Yeah.
speak. I like when they first started talking, I was like, oh, like they sound normal now. You know what I mean? Like I don't
Yeah.
know.
Much
Yeah,
appreciated to
yeah.
them to not use like very stereotypical Asian accents on them.
Yes,
So
yes.
much love to Leslie on that one.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and some species of course, the Nemoidians, if you're not familiar, are the same species as the Trade Federation from the prequel trilogy, like Newt Gunray and many others. So, shortly thereafter, the ship is boarded by two Jedi, which gave me heavy flashbacks to the
Joy.
Phantom Menace. Because Phantom Menace kind of opens up with the same way. There's that Trade Federation ship being manned by the Nemoidians. Then, of course, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan come on board. Similarly, in this episode, Yord and his Padawan Tessie or Tassi, I believe is how it was pronounced, board the ship. We didn't really see much of her after this, to the best of my memory, did we, Joey?
Yeah, this was the only scene I think that we saw her in.
Right. Yeah. And then we, shortly thereafter, we learn more about Yord as a character, but we also get to see him reunite with Osha, and she is happy to see him. But he's like, oh, I'm here on business. You almost
Yeah.
sense a little bit of saltiness.
Hmm.
And I wasn't sure. I wanted to get your take on this too. Do you think this was just like a we used to be Jedi sort of thing, and now I have to be businesslike, or do you think this was a like we had feelings for each other sort of thing, and you left the
That's a
Jedi.
very interesting. Yes, I kind of had those vibes too. And I forget for what reason, but there was either a look or a particular smile, or even maybe just the glee that kind of went through Osha when she saw Yord. So I think it could have gone either way, and it probably I don't think it's gonna end up being like one of those like maybe it was a romance type of thing or a forbidden romance type of thing, but yeah, there was definitely from your side at least, I believe that he was just there on business. He doesn't want to make this more of a thing than it has to be. She is and and you even see that when his Padawan Tassi was like questioning her, it was very much like an interrogation essentially. So I think that's where
Hmm.
she was going into.
Yeah, yeah. Also, Gibbo confirming for us, this was the very first use of the word mechneck in
Let's
any
go.
of Star Wars. So shout out Gibbo for the fact checking on that one. But yeah, we learn Osha was originally brought into the Jedi Order after her family and village were killed. We learn, of course, more info about that later on into the show. But they obviously suspect someone matching Osha's description as being the killer of Master Indara, and is even confirmed by the bartender when they, bring an
Hmm.
eyewitness account. He's like, "Yep, that's her. That's the one that killed Master Indara." Of course, having a twin, like,
Hmm.
what can you do to defend yourself at that
Did
point,
did you
other than
find did
like,
you find that funny that they brought the witness to her? Like,
yeah,
normally
that's a
when
good
there's a
point.
witness, there's a witness, they stay at a somewhere. Think of every police, show that you ever watch. It's not like they're bringing the witness everywhere. It's like, is that her? Is that her?
Right. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. I mean, also the fact that we've seen that this bartender has a kid, so
Hmm.
the kid is either just chilling at home with maybe the other parent, or I don't know,
Maybe
or
the kids
the
waiting the
kid came
ship too.
along for
Yeah.
the ride. Yeah, but yeah, I didn't even think about that. They brought the witness to the suspected murderer instead of bringing the suspected murderer to the witness,
Hmm.
but they do inevitably take her into custody. To the Jedi Temple on Coruscant is where we fast forward in the next scene, and we get our first glimpse at Soul, who is teaching this room full of younglings we saw in the trailer. And for me personally, maybe this is like showing my hand too much at my answer to our question of the week this week, but Master Soul is at this point, 2 episodes into the show, definitely my favorite character. I think he gives me, and there's a big reason for that. I think he gives me pretty significant Qui Gon Jinn vibes.
Hmm.
I just love Qui Gon as a character, and I think anytime I see elements of him in other characters, kind of the grayness, the willingness to question, if it's for the sake of like the greater good and not just necessarily go along every time with what the Jedi is saying because it's what you have to do, and sometimes choosing the other alternative if it means the good thing to do or the better outcome potentially. He's clearly driven, I would say, a little bit more by emotion than Qui-Gon is, it seems to me. I think that's kind of evident when you see his relationship with Osha. But what did you think about Master Soul as a character?
I mean, same way. Very much the Qui Gon Jinn vibes. I mean, almost down to the hair, honestly. So
Yeah.
I think that he's a perfect like facsimile, if you will, almost of what we saw there. And interestingly enough, that's one of the first masters you see in Phantom Menace too. So is that something that kind of carries on? I know we're still
Hmm.
100 years away from Phantom Menace, but to have that kind of teaching style or that kind of mindset, kind of does this get passed on? We saw an interaction with him and Jackie kind of later on. Just not everything's black and white. You gotta be able to understand how to you have to understand how to understand things. And I think that's a great lesson that he teaches Jackie a little bit later on. But yeah, definitely the Qui Gon Jinn vibes, and I'm not gonna say if he's my favorite yet because I want to make it a little bit interesting later on. But yes,
Yeah, yeah,
definitely one of the favorites.
yeah, yeah, definitely. So, speaking of another favorite of the episode, we got to see Master Vernestra Rowe for the first time in live action, a pretty significant character in a lot of the High Republic novels and comics. For those that are fans of the High Republic era, in written form, heavily showcased as a character in all of those works, and she enters kind of after the conclusion of Master Soul's lesson with the younglings to inform him of the death of Master Endara. And there's this moment you can kind of see of just sadness on the face of Soul. And that there is also, we learn right after that, a prisoner transport taking place with OSHA on it. And the prisoners have planned an escape. And so this escape scene I thought was so interesting because you kind of got to see a couple different people who it felt like none of them were. I don't know. I feel like in a prisoner setting, um, like there's this sense of almost camaraderie by necessity, if you will.
Mm,
But it didn't feel like OSHA got included in that, and I was like,
right.
oh,
Yeah.
even the prisoner who she saved, it was like left her behind and took the second escape pod. So of course the prisoners make this plan to escape. The prisoners disable the droid pilots and use the escape pods, including the prisoner who had the weird looking thing on his face. I don't know what
The
you
like
call that
the
thing.
like the organic muzzle thing that was kind of creepy.
Yeah, it looked like something out of, I don't know if you've ever seen Alien or not, but it looked
Hmm.
like something out of like the movie Alien, back in one of those like sci-fi horror movies or something like that. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I would hate to have that thing on me." But yeah, the prisoner who she saves kind of betrays him, um and as we mentioned, they disabled the droid pilots, used the escape pods, and she's like, "Well, what's left but to strap myself into this seatbelt for the crash landing," which inevitably happens. And it's like, "Huh, my first thought after this was, how did that ship not explode on impact?
This is a
But I
yeah.
was like, hey, she
I think there was an
survived. That's the
episode.
important
There
thing.
was an episode in Bad
Um,
Batch, right? An episode in Bad Batch where like they crashed the ship, or they crashed one of the vessels, and they just jumped off. It kind of reminded me of that. Just like, you know, in animated
yeah,
form, you could get away with that kind of stuff, but I don't know about this one.
yeah, it felt like it just like perfectly skidded, like it was like landing on water or something. I don't know. Um, but then so right after that, we cut back to a scene with Soul and Jecki, and Jecki's looking at Soul and noticing that he has a hollow of Osha in this scene. And there's a great teaching moment. I think you alluded to it just a second ago. But there's a great teaching moment in this scene where Soul says, "Our memories are our lessons if we don't meditate on the past." And I think this is in response to Jecki saying something to him like, dwelling on that will create feelings of nostalgia, kind of hinting at the fact that Jedi shouldn't, have emotion or whatever. Another reason I love Soul is because there's this kind of like thought within the Jedi code that you're supposed to just like deny emotion no matter what it is. And Jecki is very much like almost like pushing back on her master a little bit for doing what seems like encouraging emotion. And he, of course, has the great line as we mentioned: "Our memories are lessons. If we don't meditate on the past, we are doomed to repeat it." Actually, Jecki finishes the quote for him because
Yeah,
it seems like she's probably heard this from him before. It's
right.
a reoccurring teaching moment or something like that.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Uh,
This is something that he's driven into her memory, her core memory now is that, although maybe it is emotion, it is also a lesson too. So I think that's important there to be able to kind of read between the lines. Not everything is black and white, like we've said. A lot in the gray. That's where Ben's favorite spots are, is in the gray. And to have a master and Padawan kind of learning that lesson together is pretty powerful.
yeah, I would agree. Um, we also then learned that the prisoners who kind of didn't include OSHA on the escape plan were captured and are interrogated. In fact, Master Soul walks in and does the old Obi-Wan Kenobi to
Hmm.
the prisoner who had the organic muzzle on and betrayed OSHA, and interrogates him. And by that I mean he just gets the information from him by using
From
the
his brain.
Force. I know, and I don't know if I mentioned this while we were watching. Maybe I did, but this feels like another moment where it's like maybe the Jedi are, I don't know. Did you feel like this was like a
Hmm.
little intrusive or maybe overstepping a
Yeah.
little bit? I don't know.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think the rules haven't been written quite yet here, so kind of the Wild West with all these Jedi around. All these Jedi can do whatever they want.
yeah, yeah. I mean, nonetheless, he does obtain the information, and um, Vernestra Rowe is kind of hesitant to let him go on this mission, and eventually she gives in, and she's like, "Okay, take a small team with you, and so that way you can bring in OSHA after she's escaped on this prisoner transport." And so OSHA wakes up from the crash, and she's being followed by someone. And initially, I was like, "Oh, is that her sister?" And then we learn after that it's actually like a younger version of her sister. And this is kind of a reoccurring theme in this episode that, in fact, I think it's the same scene that you see her being OSHA, kind of like transform into a younger version of herself as
Hmm.
she's meeting the younger version of May. I thought that was a cool and pretty powerful and well done scene. Looked it up, by the way. Those two, young May and young Osha, are actually two different actors. That's not green screened. Who are
Right. Yeah.
twins
Hmm. Yeah, that's awesome.
playing the role. Which, yeah, it was just pretty cool. Again, that's kind of that Parent Trap moment that we
Yeah,
got from
absolutely.
uh, episode one. But the small team running after OSHA is comprised of Soul, Jecki, and Yord. We learn in the next scene. We also learn that Jedi like to iron robes in this scene, I don't know if we'd seen that before in Star Wars, but Yord is such an interesting character to me. He gives me Padawan vibes, but he's a Jedi Knight,
Yeah,
and I'm like,
yeah,
huh,
that's a good
you
call.
know,
I don't know if he's like a very new. Oh, well, in his discussion with Osha, I think he said he had
yeah,
been Jedi Knighted like a couple years prior to that meeting.
yeah, I think he said 2 years, yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, so he's a recent Jedi Knight, but maybe still has some Padawan tendencies to work out. I don't know if ironing your robe with no shirt on while other Jedi walk in is part of
That's
that
a
or
good call,
not.
yeah.
But
Yeah, don't you
yeah,
have, like, force that you should be able to sense them coming, right?
Since they're coming or something. Yeah, I don't know.
Throw on a shirt real quick.
uh, yeah. Um, well, of course, it kind of flips back and forth between scenes here, but Osha sees a young version of her sister May. Kind of more into this scene, we do realize that it actually is the younger version of her sister. And then there's this pretty powerful scene where we relive the fires on their home planet of Brindok, which is, I think, where we first learned in the episode earlier from Soul, if I'm not mistaken, that he saved Osha on Brindok. And then, of course, in this Force Vision Dyad, not really sure what we're calling it thing, they say to each other, that being May and Osha, "You're with me, I'm with you, always one, but born as two." Almost like a. It reminded me of. Have you read Lord of the Rings?
Mhm.
It reminded me
Yeah,
of like one of the things they say in Lord of the Rings that rhyming to it. I don't know.
yeah.
Uh, but yeah, you're with me, I'm with you, always one, but born as two. As above sits the stars, and below lies the sea. I give you you, and you give me me. Uh, and then there was this really creepy moment. Speaking of horror scenes, from I mean, if the scene earlier in the episode with the organic muzzle is a scene out of like Alien, the scene with the like dark-eyed May is like something out of the like Exorcist or something. I don't know. I saw that
Yeah,
happen. I was like, "Oh my gosh, what's happening here? Why are her eyes black?"
right.
What did you think about that? I don't know.
It took me by surprise a little bit, and after watching it and also kind of looking at the screenshot here, I am reminded that in the one of the trailers, there was another, I think, Jedi or someone that kind of fell to that too. I don't know if you remember it, but it was like it seems like a younger Jedi, possibly who was being either captured or they fought against, but he ended up his eyes turns black there too. So I don't know if that's indicative of something. I don't know what that something is at this point. But it's an interesting thing to see here, and knowing that at some point later in the series, there's going to be another person that kind of has these black eyes kind of fall to them.
Oh, I haven't I don't have a memory of that. I mean, I definitely believe you in the sense that I just probably didn't catch that in the trailer or wherever it was seen. So that's a really good catch. In that sense, maybe we will see it or later on in the season. Then it was a Jedi Master, you said, or do you remember who it was?
I don't remember who it was. Yeah, it was no one that we've seen yet.
Huh. Okay. Okay. Well, that'll be something to anticipate in the coming weeks. But during this scene, Soul is aware of the sister May, or during the next scene, I should say, because it's Soul kind of reminiscing on this moment. Uh, but Soul is aware of the sister May and saw her die, although it was not in OSHA's file. Now, I was a little bit confused watching the episode, to be honest with you, because I think
Mm,
at one point he tells Jackie or your guy. But then later in the episode, at the very end, when he's with OSHA, he's saying, like, "I know it wasn't you. I know it was May." So you
right,
may
yeah.
have, was he hiding something from Yord and Jecki?
That's a great question. I'm not sure where the truth lies with Soul here at this moment. Whether it is, because I mean, I do believe that he didn't know that she was still alive. Um, but I think maybe at that point that's when he understands that there's a possibility that she's alive also. So I don't know when he makes that deciphers that decision or deciphers that choice. So they're just like, okay, well now she's alive. But yeah, I could see how that can be a little bit confusing. But I think he does believe her at that same time when she's talking to Osha later on.
Okay. Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
that would make sense. Kind of came to the realization throughout the episode. Or maybe like
Hmm.
didn't even want to believe it initially and was, I don't know, something like that. But yeah, so Soul, Yord, and Jecki track down Osha. and they're almost in this like cave-like structure. And they eventually find her. She's kind of hanging over the edge of this cliff, standing over the edge of the cliff, I should say. And she like trips and falls, and Soul, of course, reaches out with the Force, saves her, brings her up and saves her. And then Osha tells Soul that May is alive, and this is that moment we just referenced where he believes her. So um, we then learn that May is with someone named or titled simply as the Stranger, and sort of a real cryptic ending to the end of the episode after this really sweet reuniting scene with Soul and Osho. We get a very different scene with May and this stranger with a red lightsaber who is or is not a Sith. We're obviously still not exactly sure yet. But the quote that the stranger gives to end episode one is the Jedi live in a dream they believe everyone shares. If you attack a Jedi with a weapon, you will fail. Steel or laser are no threat to them, but an acolyte. An acolyte kills without a weapon. An acolyte kills the dream. I mean, I feel like there's so much to digest and break down with just this quote. I don't even know where to start. I mean, what does that mean? An acolyte kills the dream. Like the lack of a weapon thing is clearly hinted at here for some reason. The why to that is not exactly apparent to me. I don't know. What are your thoughts on this quote by the stranger at the end of the episode?
I think it did its job and in having us ask all these questions about it. This was a very, important moment in the episode in the series here because I think in this quote lies the reasoning behind everything with the acolyte, with May, with the stranger. I think all of that lies in this quote in the last scene of this episode. So what it means now to us, it doesn't mean much, but we can talk about it, and it's we could dissect it. Do you remember in was it in the second Matrix? I think it was the second Matrix where there was like that. I forget. Was it the Architect? Was that the name of that character? Like at the end of
Yeah.
that movie, had like a 20-minute like dissertation on. I can't even remember what it was, but I remember people printing that thing out and dissecting that line by line. I mean, this is not 20 minutes long, but I feel this kind of has those same vibes where a lot of what is going on, the reason for this series is right here in this quote.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I mean, while you were talking there, I was also just curious more so about what it really means to be an acolyte. And so I looked
Mm.
it up. And in the most simple version, acolyte just kind of means follower. Usually we hear it like kind of in a religious context, I guess, but I think really what it's being, depicted as in this show is kind of just truly a follower. The main, I think, confusing thing for us is that we don't really know what is being followed, who is being followed, why they're following it. It's
Mm.
like we know May is following something or someone, but we don't know anything about the why. So, yeah, I mean, like you said, it's sort of the reason for this show, and hopefully we get more information in regards to that why piece of it as we move on into episode 3 and beyond next week. Well, we then move into episode 2, of course, as we mentioned earlier, titled Revenge and Justice on Olega, not Omega,
Not
as we
Omega.
noted during our, not Omega, as we noted during our reaction. May makes her way into the Jedi Temple with the help of a local kid. It reminded me of kind of that robot that we see at Jabba's palace, sort of that same sort of look and style of the droid that popped his head out. But May makes her way into the Jedi Temple and finds a meditating Jedi named Master Torben, the second one on her so-called list, and attempts to repeat the same thing she does to Master Andara by saying, "We have unfinished business. Attack me with all your strength." So it's almost like as if May has this hit list of Jedi, so to speak, and they who have all wronged her in some way or another, and is like going back and seeking this revenge. Of course, as the episode titles, it is revenge. But there is this odd, like invisible wall of force or something, so to speak, that she is unable to penetrate. And there's this invisible force field surrounding Master Torben, and he's almost like in this weird silent trance state, which we learned a little bit more about later in the episode. But then we kind of move over to Osha's story at this point in time, and she's on a transport with Jecki, and then she's explaining to Jecki that she's a mechanic. That's what she's doing for work, and she works on the exterior of ships in place of R2 units, which I thought was funny because I think in episode 1 we were like, why don't we just send the R2 units to do what they're
Right.
doing? And so then they brought it up in episode 2, and I was like, oh, okay, well at least they like referenced it, But yeah, like I feel like that job could easily be done by R2 units, but hey, whatever you can do to get money in a galaxy far, far away, you got to do it, if it
Hmm.
means working as a mech next. Yord is concerned the twins could be working together, and definitely expresses this to Soul, and kind of is fulfilling this role of. I mean, I think we called him the goody two shoes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just kind of, yeah, yeah. Do you think he's gonna fulfill that role for the duration of the show, or do you think there's gonna be a character shift in his
Who's
demeanor at some point?
who was that in Andor? The dude that we ended up just like not liking or never hearing. Was it Karn? I think his name was Karn, right?
Oh, yeah, Karn,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. He has the possibility of becoming the Karn of this series,
Ooh,
just based off of maybe not to the point where we just absolutely don't care about him, but it's almost like you're just like, come on, stop being such a Jedi. You gotta be able to look outside the box a little bit. So, yeah, I think that I don't know, whenever you have this type of character, they end up like learning a lot more because they have to kind of adapt to because of a situation, because of circumstances. I have a feeling that we're going to see this with Yord also. Yord, Karn, I mean they do sound alike, those types of those names.
yeah. And then is that mean Yord is gonna end up in a odd situationship by the end of this season with what's the name of that woman who works for the Empire in
Oh, yeah,
Andor?
yeah. Oh, I can't remember, but yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. What a
Uh,
weird, I forgot about, I blocked that from my memory for reasons.
yeah. Anyways, that just proves I need to rewatch Andor before season 2 comes out.
Mhm.
But back to the Acolyte. Sol tells Vernestra that he believes that May is responsible for Indara's murder, and so in the process, kind of trying to like acquit Osha of all charges, so to speak, that she's facing in terms of the murder of Master Indara. And so then Sol and the team go to Olega to find May. This is, of course, including Osha, now that she is with them after the end of the first episode. And Osha knows that Torben is on Olega.
I
And so
wanted
May meet.
I put this specifically because I thought it was kind of
Mhm.
weird that this is kind of being run by the Jedi, and without any prompt at all, Osha says, "That's where Torben is." I don't know if you remember that line in there. But when I was doing the rewatch, they were saying like, "Yeah, we're gonna go over to Olega, to find May," and all of a sudden, and Osha knew right away that Torben was on there. So I don't know if that's giving us a hint of something, because she hasn't been part of the Jedi Order for what, 6 years or something. So to have
Right.
that be one of the things that she says as they're discussing it, I just thought it was an interesting thing. We may need to put a pin in it, but it's just something that came up that was interesting.
I mean,
Deidre was the Andor character. Thank you,
oh
to Gibbo
yes,
for that. Yes.
yes, Deidre and Karn. Do you ship it or not? No. Um, but no, my impression of that statement by Osha was because later in the episode we learned that Master Torment has been meditating in a silent state in that spot for 10 years.
Oh,
So
so yeah, so she would know. Yeah.
my understanding is that she just kind of assumed that he was still meditating,
Yeah, yeah,
which,
yeah.
to be fair, 6 years is a long time. So, you know, maybe she got lucky and just like remembering that he's, still in the same place he was 6 years 6 years ago when she was a Jedi. But that was kind of how I interpreted that. I'm not sure if
Mm.
how accurate that is or
I'm going to conspiracy theory into it. I get it. I get it.
not. But, can you imagine taking that, like, vow of silence for 10 years and just, meditating for that long? That'd be kinda wild. Master Torben. So May meets with Kamir, in the apothecary shop where he says he waited all night for her, and May asks Kamir. I hope I'm is it Quimir or
I think
Kimir?
it's
I feel like I
I think it's Kimir. I think you said it
okay.
right for the first time.
That's what I thought. Just wanted to double check. May asks Kamir for a weapon, and we learned this weapon is a poison made from bunta, which I also learned in this scene that bunta is a plant. Maybe I don't know. My only reference for bunta was the Bunta Eve Classic in
Ah.
uh in episode 1. So I don't know why they named a race after a type of poisonous plant. Um, but hey, I don't know what the connection is there, but this plant, this thing he's putting into the poison, like turns it this bright green color, as you can see if you're watching the video version of the podcast. But Kamir says the Jedi justify their galactic dominance in the name of peace, and peace, and then May finishes the quote, of course, is a lie. I know. So this also feels like a moment that Kamir has probably said this to May at some
Hmm.
point before. And just a quick note on the bunta. Gibbo updating us here. Bunta was a dark poisonous substance made from dried leaves of a plant from the planet Brendok. So
Hmm.
maybe bunta is spelled two different ways. I'm now realizing
Yeah.
maybe this bunta is spelled with a U, and I think the Bunta Eve Classic is spelled
Two
with two
O's.
O's. Yeah. So maybe they are different things, but so maybe this Bunta is a brand new incorporation into the Star Wars universe. Um, but yeah, thank you, Gibbo, for that quick note on the clarification on Bunta and uh, yeah. So Kamir says the Jedi justify their galactic dominance in the name of peace, and then Maya finishes it with by saying peace is a lie. I know. So this is something I think that we saw in one of the trailers, and um, is kind of hinting at the direction of the galaxy at this point in time. There's been this long sustained period of peace, and now there's people looking at the keepers of the peace, the Jedi in this scenario, and saying, the peace they're keeping is not as peaceful as they might make it seem it is, or at least in some form of that statement is what they're saying. And so um it's then said that only May can give Torben the absolution, which I thought was also like a real. I think this was when we were watching together. I was like, "Whoa, that got dark." Like,
Yeah.
whenever we're referring to like killing someone as absolution, there's like some serious, dark
Mm,
elements at foot in this show. Which honestly, like, I I, I was kind of surprised that they didn't shy away from that. I feel
right.
like it feels like kind of a newer Star Wars thing to not go that dark with a lot of their content. So in that
Hmm.
regard, I was a little bit surprised. I don't know. What about you?
I think this show is going to be a little bit different from other shows where it is going to touch to the dark. I mean, it's called the Acolyte, right? So I think it's only fair that we see a little bit more of the dark side, a little bit more real dark side themes
Right.
here.
Yeah. Yeah. So May says she's gonna give Torben absolution. But then says it wouldn't bode well for either of us if you told him about this. There in the next scene. And I don't know why. It's not like fresh in my brain. Who is the him in this quote that she's talking about,
We,
Joey?
that we're thinking it's the stranger. I think that's who we're thinking
Right.
that is probably who him is.
Yeah. Like there's lots of kind of secrecy and
Hmm.
involved in this scene, and so I guess I assumed that's who it was talking about, but I couldn't recall if there was a different person who it was referring
Mm-mm.
to. But I guess it is the stranger who's being referenced here, and so Soul. Uh, we move back to his storyline, and we learn that he couldn't save both May and Osha in Brindak, and that he made the decision to save Osha. And how exactly this happened, I'm sure we're going to see another more in-depth look at in the future of the show, but I'm very curious about kind of how exactly that took place. But the story continues, and the team continued to investigate on Olega, not Omega. And May approaches Master Torben with the option to tell the Jedi Council what he did or receive forgiveness from May. And I want to know more about this. Like we're left so much in the dark to the point where it's like a little bit annoying that they don't tell us somewhat more. Like whatever she says, he is willing to not tell and come out of his 10-year state of being
Hmm.
silent and meditating and take the poison just for the sake of not telling the Jedi Council what he did, whatever this thing is that he did. Um, do you have any idea what this thing might be?
I mean, clearly something something went down on Brendock, So I think there is a huge thing, a huge secret that is being kept by these four Jedi, maybe a little bit more. I think we talked about it in one of our episodes that what this mystery is going to be, and I think it's going to be a lot of it's going to be surrounding this. Obviously, what was it that these four Jedi did to May, to Osha, possibly to their family? I don't know. Who knows? So that's what we're going to have to determine over the next few weeks here.
Yeah. In the next scene, Osha sees the small version of May and follows her kind of in this like force dyad, force vision moment that we're still not really sure like how much reality is incorporated into these scenes. But of course, Torben takes the poison, and his last words are, "Forgive me. We thought we were doing the right thing." So clearly, there's a ton of guilt associated with
Hmm.
whatever was done amongst these four Jedi: Andara, Torben, Sol, and Kelnaka, who we got to see at the end of the episode. And with the drinking of the poison, and with the death of Andara in the first episode, now only half of them are remaining: Sol and Kelnaka, who I would assume are going to be kind of the primary focuses of the next few episodes, or if not the rest of the season. So Osha discovers Torben's body with the poison vial, which was a little bit odd that she was somehow able to get there before everyone else by herself, conveniently, so that then they walked in the room and it was like, aha, you see, she is the murderer.
You're right.
But in a twist, yeah, yeah. But in a twist, Yord was actually just following her the whole time, and he was able to affirm that she didn't do it, even after the Jedi discovered Osha with Torben. Yord walks out. He's like, "It's okay. I was watching her. She's actually clean. She's not guilty of this crime." And so then Jackie develops this plan, and Soul says it's a good plan and goes with it to send Osha in as May to talk to Kamir in the apothecary, which is kind of a hinting, at least for me, that Jackie is going to sort of transition into a larger role, perhaps. If she's coming up with these plans and Soul is saying, this is a wise thing you're saying. It
Hmm.
feels like Yord is kind of getting pushed aside, and Jackie is
As
like,
he's
"You're
getting carned.
yeah, he's getting corned." um, so in this scene where Osha is posing as May, Kamir confesses supplying the poison, and also mentioned that he will be pleased. Again, this reference to he, who the he is, we still don't know. And the Jedi come in to capture him, and he says, "Please don't do the memory wipe thing," which I thought was an absolutely great line. We haven't really seen anything like that, I guess, before in Star Wars, where someone just asking like, "Please don't use the Force to do the memory thing on me." Kind of a great alluding moment to, for me at least, New Hope, the Ben Kenobi scene. These aren't the droids you're looking for moment.
Hmm.
Kind of just a reinventing of the wheel about kind of the opposite side of being on the other end of that Force ability, but a pretty funny moment nonetheless. And Kamir knows that May wants revenge on these four Jedi, and she will return to the shop later that night. And so he, informs the Jedi of this and kind of allows them to, create this further plan. But Osha wants to confront May for killing her family, but Soul wants to face her alone. And so this is the portion of the story it's not really 100% certain how this happened. There was a fire, so to speak, I believe, and the fire killed the family. But it was unclear to me, and maybe you remember better than I do, Joey. Um, like if May intentionally started the fire, that was kind of my understanding,
Hmm.
but I don't know if I misinterpreted that.
Yeah, that's the vibes I got from it too. That May did that on purpose and killed their family. So, and that's why Osha is blaming her for the deaths of her family. And at this point,
Right.
doesn't know that. Well, obviously now she knows that May is alive, but I think before this series starts, she doesn't even know that she's still alive at this point.
And yeah, as we mentioned, Soul wants to face her alone, and so he says, I couldn't save her when you were children. Let me try now. And this is kind of his way of trying to convince Osha that he, wants to face May alone. And so Soul and May battle, and he notices that she attacks him without any weapon and questions it, kind of sticking to this. An acolyte doesn't attack with a weapon mentality that she's been trained to do. Which, by the way, I just want to like clarify what exactly does that mean? Like, she used is a throwing knife not a weapon, or is
Hmm, hmm.
poison not a weapon? How exactly does that work? But maybe it means specifically a lightsaber. But throughout this fight, at the end of it, or towards the end of it, Soul tells May that Osha is alive, and May then uses her ground bending ability for cover and escape. A little Avatar reference in the show notes
Yeah,
there
yeah.
for us today.
Good. I'm glad you caught that.
uh, yeah, yeah. By the way, have you seen the live action Avatar? I haven't seen it yet. I want to
I
watch
haven't
it.
seen it yet. Yeah, we maybe we need to watch that one.
Yeah, branching off and doing an Avatar podcast maybe sometime in the future or something. I don't know, but but yeah, May uses this ability to kind of create this huge cloud of dust, otherwise known as ground bending, for cover and escapes, which led me to believe, like, why do Jedi not do that all the time? But Osha
Good
and
point.
May, uh, yeah, yeah, Osha and May then cross paths during May's attempted escape, and Osha shoots this stun gun, so to speak, at her and misses badly. We made jokes as we were watching it that she took training from stormtroopers. Do you think she missed on purpose, or she's just a terrible shot?
I think she missed on purpose because that was a really bad shot. I don't know how
Yeah.
far she was from her, but there's no way she misses her that much.
Yeah, it felt like that to me as well, and I can't recall if we've ever seen in live action or in animation, like, the image of the stun pulsating out from the gun missing someone. I thought that was kind of
Oh, that's a good
an
point.
interesting way it was shown there, but yeah, she misses badly, and I don't know if for May it was a realization of that OSHA was willing to do it, or a realization that OSHA couldn't do it. Um,
Mm.
whether she realized that she missed on purpose, or anyways. So that was something that crossed my mind as well. But we kind of move into the next scene, and we see Venestra wants to stop and discuss strategy, but Soul wants to chase May to Kelnaka, which we kind of get to see him at the very end of the episode as well. But Kimir says he will bring May to Kofar. In the next scene, we see that happen as well. So, on Kofar, some scavengers are scoping out Kelnaka's home. This Kofar looks very much like Kashyyyk in a way. It's kind of this wooded, jungly planet. But he stops them, he being Kelnaka, by taking away their weapons using the Force, which was just such a fantastic moment. I was like, oh my gosh, a Wookiee in live action using the Force, something we haven't exactly seen before. By the way, Kelnaka being depicted by Jonas. I know is his first name. I always butcher his last name, but he's the same guy who has played like Chewbacca and all the
Hmm.
Wookiees in recent Star Wars projects since the passing of Peter Mayhew, or even really since before the passing of Peter Mayhew, probably
Hmm.
for the
Yeah.
past 10 years or so. But yeah, so he's reprising his role as a Wookiee. Got to see him as a Wookiee Jedi this time, which is pretty cool. We can assume that Kelnaka will probably be, just based on the way stories are told, probably be the next Jedi that May goes after. It seems like she would want to save Soul for last, probably, is the direction we're headed. But of course, those are the only two left. So we're going to learn a lot more about Kelnaka in next week's episode, and excited to do so and kind of learn more about his story. And that's about where we left off with episode 2. We managed to go through kind of the details of episode 1 and 2. Probably, what was that, like, about, excluding the news and everything else, about an hour's time, which, not too bad. Not our best work,
Yeah.
but definitely not
Yeah.
our worst work.
That's right. Yeah. And there's so much to this show already in 2 episodes. when I was writing up the notes for this, that there's just a lot of things that are happening, and
Hmm.
they're all pretty important. There isn't anything that you can really miss out of this one. So that's the kind of show that you want to be a part of, or that you want to watch, is because you get to have these like long-winded discussions. You could have these theories, which we're going to talk about in a second, and it makes it much more enjoyable as a consumer watching these types of shows that have like all of these details that we have to like break down. One thing I did like about Lost is that that's what every episode was. Like you just had these little clues here and there that you had to like figure out, and sometimes they didn't really come through, and there was a loose end by the end of the series. But the journey to it was a lot of fun on Lost. But hopefully with here we have a better destination.
Yes, yeah, that's what I was exactly gonna say. A more satisfactory ending, a better destination. Shout out to everyone that's seen all of Lost. It's quite the adventure. If you've been on it, you understand. But to close today's episode, we wanted to just briefly share kind of any theories we had, kind of moving into the last 6 episodes of the show, considering we're already 25% of the way through season one, if we do get anything beyond a season one. Um, would you like to go first, or do you want me to go first, Joey, in regards to
First.
our favorite theories? Say that again, sorry.
Oh yeah, you can go first and talk about yours.
Okay. All right, all right. Well, this is one that I think I don't know when at what point I developed it. Maybe it was in the trailer that we saw with Kamir like a week or two ago where I first had the thought of it. But I feel like I settled into the theory after seeing the episodes, especially episode 2 with the poison stuff. My theory right now is that Kamir is the evil force user with the red lightsaber. And when he's talking to May about he would be pleased, he's actually referring to himself in the third person. Um, I just I think it'd be I think it would be interesting. I would be more surprised if we see the dark side force user with the red lightsaber being someone who we haven't seen yet in the show. I think it's more likely, and I think it would be a greater reveal, and ultimately make the show kind of a better experience if the person who's revealed to be the dark side force user is someone we've already seen in the show. Whether it's
Of
someone
course.
who we've seen as a Jedi or someone who we haven't seen as a Jedi, I want that person to be someone who we already feel somewhat connected to in some way. I think it makes for a more surprising and exciting story. So Kamir being the evil force user is my theory at the moment. How about you?
I like that one. Um, so my theory kind of revolves around the twins. I'll admit my theory isn't fully developed yet. But between May and of course Osha, them being the twins that came from Brendok, um, obviously something has gone greatly wrong on Brendok, and the fact that they are able to kind of, well, from Osha's standpoint, is able to kind of see May in the younger version of May. I think there's just a lot more to that story. One of the things that I'm toying with is that they kind of swapped places at some point,
Ooh.
because for whatever reason May is able to do all these kind of force moves, where if you remember when Osha was kind of in that prison transport, she was clearly trying to use the force to get like the key or whatever it was, or if it was Pip, I think it was the droid, and she wasn't able to, right? So at
Oh.
some point there was a flip there, you know, and that kind of mind, the way that she is able to see May. I don't know if that's really May, or if that's really that she's really May. So those types of things. So I have this working theory that at some point they had flipped, and that is the reason why May is as powerful as she is, and Osha is essentially just kind of not.
I love that and I fully subscribe to it. I mean, there's got to be a reason that they have that scene where she's trying in the prison and she can't do it. Like this is
Right.
someone who was a Jedi. Like I know she hasn't been one for 6 years, but does it all just go away like that? I mean,
Yeah,
that's a really good point. I love
yeah.
that.
And she totally missed that shot. So you're gonna tell me that this Jedi can't point and shoot, so there's something more to these twins.
Yeah, I love that one. That's a great one. Also, yeah, let us know, those of you listening or watching, let us know your theories, whether it be on the socials or down below if you're watching the video version of the podcast in the YouTube comments. Any crazy theories for today's episode? We'd love to hear them, especially when there's a new show. I always love just hearing what people have to say and what people have to think about where the show is headed and the direction. So, the question we would love to pose today for the viewer question of the week. This will be available to answer in a poll version over on the Hoth Hangout Twitter, as well as on the Hoth Hangout YouTube community tab. Is simply, who is your favorite character in the Acolyte so far? I know for me personally, it's Soul. Joey, I know you alluded to maybe having
Mhm,
a favorite character earlier.
mhm.
Was it Soul or was it someone else?
Kamir.
Come
Kamir is
here.
actually my favorite
Okay.
because if you remember who is my favorite Star Wars character of all time is Lando. He's kind of filling that Lando role for me right now. I kind of feel him, like kind of
Oh,
that
okay.
smuggler, kind of smooth talker. Um, no, not a Jedi, not a Sith, but kind of in that middle, trying to look out for himself type of character. So yeah, I think right now Kamir is with May and Osha a very very close second, but I really like Kamir's character, and to your point, if he ends up being that evil force, dark force user, I mean, of course, that's gonna just be gravy for me.
Okay. I thought you were gonna say the opposite. I thought you would say, like, he wouldn't fulfill the smuggler role as much anymore, but
Yeah.
it would be even better, you think?
Yeah.
Okay, I like it. I like it. Well, once again, let us know your thoughts on who your favorite character is, whether it be on Twitter or on the YouTube community tab. And on next week's episode of the Hoth Hangout podcast, join us for episode 84, where we will be discussing all things episode 3 of The Acolyte. Again, that comes out next Tuesday evening at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Definitely looking forward to watching that one. And the reaction for that will be available here on the Hoth Hangout YouTube channel as well. Again, that's episode 3 coming next week. And to conclude today's episode, we want to say a quick thank you to all those of you who are subscribed over on YouTube. Thank you to the 426 of you who are subscribed there. Check us out on YouTube for the video version of every podcast, as well as all of our reactions to the latest Star Wars shows when they go live, including our recent reactions to The Acolyte. Check out episodes 1 and 2 over on YouTube now. You can also contact us via email at hothhangout@gmail.com with your Star Wars related questions, thoughts, or otherwise, and we'd love to showcase them here on the pod. Additionally, you can find the podcast whether it be on Spotify or Apple or anywhere you get your pods. Check us out on those platforms. You can leave a 5-star review. You can check us out on the socials at Hoth Hangout, whether it be TikTok, Instagram, or X. We are findable there. Again, that's at Hoth Hangout. You can also find us on the Hoth Hangout community Discord server, I should say. The link to join that is available in the show notes of today's episode. Definitely head down there and check it out. Joey, any last thoughts on anything Acolyte premiere?
This was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. I thoroughly enjoyed these two episodes. I enjoyed the rewatches. I enjoyed talking about, creating the notes for this. This I don't know. This might be my favorite right now of a premiere of the any show that we watch together. So hopefully the rest of the season does the same. But yeah, I've got high hopes for the show right now.
Yeah, I do too. Lots to be excited for, lots of reasons to have high hopes. I think it exceeded many of our expectations, and hopefully it continues to do so. Want to say, lastly, a big thank you to Gibbo for producing today's show, video, and assets. Gibbo, who is probably not the secret evil force user of Hoth Hangout. I feel like I may or may not be in the running for that title, but uh, Gibbo definitely not the secret force user of Hoth Hangout. Shout out to Gibbo. Appreciate you especially for all you did behind the scenes today. If for those that don't know, if you're watching the video version of the podcast, you probably already know this, and probably maybe even if you're listening to the audio version, I am once again not recording in my typical area as I've gone through a move in the last few days and still working on the internet situation. And so, with all of my internet difficulties today, give a behind the scenes noting like all the different times that I disconnected and my audio went out. So, in the edit later, we'll more easily be able to edit around my mishaps in today's episode because of my current internet situation, which will be resolved by next week's episode. So, Gibbo, I appreciate you for that in that regard as well. So, thank you for listening today to today's episode of the Hoth Hangout podcast. Shout out to George Lucas, shout out to Dave Filoni, and shout out to the Acolyte for just being a generally awesome new show that we're enjoying very much and looking forward to enjoying even more in next week and the following weeks to come. Once again, we appreciate each and every single one of you listening. Let us know your thoughts on the socials or down below on the Acolyte. And until next week's episode, when we'll be covering episode 3, once again, thank you very much for listening. And until next time, may the Force be with you.